Hello.
Hello from Waymo. As we get going, just give us 1 minute to cover a few ride reviews.
So how long you been driving with Waymo?
You're here. Please make sure it's clear before exiting.
Yep, right here's good. Thanks. Yep, thank you. Have a good one. Thanks.
Okay, well, day one of Adobe Max is done, and it was much different than I thought it was going to be in the best way. It's very late. I'm very tired. So I'm going to do this as quick as I can. It's a lot more technical for the things that I'm excited about, a lot less general than the last time I did this, but we'll just kind of go through my notes here and overview the day. So it started with a keynote, and it was mostly an overview of the generative AI that Adobe has unveiled, their Gen Studio, their Firefly, the same things that they've had for a while, but just, talking more about how they integrate into the products from a creative angle, into Photoshop, Premiere, InDesign, Illustrator, those kind of things. It was at the Peacock Theater, which is the home of the Emmys, which I thought was kind of cool. So I was able to sit in that theater. They went over Firefly models, so expanded, how they've expanded all these models over the last year to include video, sound design, all these very specific models, and just enhance them more and more. They integrate third-party generative models into products. So they are now having it so that when you choose to use generative fill in Photoshop, it's not just Adobe's Firefly or whatever they're using for that model, but you can actually go in and choose ChatGPT, their model generation, Runway, or Google's Gemini or VO3, which was pretty cool, and that's all included in your membership as Creative Cloud. So that was kind of a pretty big deal, just because now you get all of those generative softwares included in your package, and you have access to generate video through VO3, which is a pretty big deal. Or Nano Banana was another one that they've integrated, which is kind of the latest one from DeepThink. 11 Labs is now incorporated in Premiere. That's a generative software that I use a lot for the voiceovers. I've done demos very recently in videos of how, I can change my voice and stuff, and that's now embedded in Premiere, which is huge. So you don't have to export your audio, generate it, and then re-import it. It's just included in the Premiere kind of workflow, which is pretty cool. Google and Adobe are partnering, again, DeepMind, Nano Banana, all that. People have generated 5 billion images since the release of Nano Banana 2 months ago. I just thought that was kind of a cool stat to include. Adobe is using Google models in their own models. So again, they're, incorporating VO3 and Imagen into Photoshop and things like that. Firefly is now making custom models. So basically how it works, Firefly, which is Adobe's kind of generative model for pictures and assets, you can now feed it a bunch of your own creative works, and then from there on, it's going to generate stuff that's in your style, which is just kind of like a custom GPT, which OpenAI has, but it's just cool to see it, I guess, integrated into Firefly. The AI assistant was a big thing that is being put into most, if not eventually all, of Adobe's suites, which is, you're able to use natural language to make edits. So for example, in Adobe Photoshop, you can say, hey, take this picture, increase the saturation, make the foreground pop and all this. And instead of just regenerating the picture, which is what generative AI has done, up until this point, it does a little bit of that sometimes, but it's going in and it's actually doing the settings within Photoshop to make that happen. So it's non-destructive. So you can still go in and tweak all of those features. I thought that was that's a really good approach, in my opinion, to integrating AI into creative softwares. So I that was one that I applaud. and it was cool to see the demos of it. Rename, oh yeah, this got such a big applause. Again, this is one of these technical things that you can only kind of, I guess, really relate to if you use these softwares, but it will now automatically rename your layers based on the content in them, which sounds dumb or maybe even confusing, but when you're working in Photoshop, you have all these layers and you just import them and it's just the file names, or, you know, if you have like draw a triangle, it's just going to be like shape 1. But now you can have it look at all your layers, what's the content in them, and it'll be like triangle shape, background, and that's just a huge deal because naming your layers is an important part of the process of building at any of these softwares, but it's something that everybody's just kind of too lazy to do, so you end up with a jumbled thing where you forget what each asset is when you're just looking at your layer list, but that's now all done for you. So that got huge, crowd went wild for that. Adobe Express is now integrating into ChatGPT. So that was also pretty big news. When you go into ChatGPT, you can now generate how you would, but you can say, hey, make me an InDesign file of this, like a flyer, and it makes that flyer. But you can now like literally just open that file that it generates into InDesign, and it has all the layers. They're all editable. They're all changeable. That was a pretty big deal. It's coming to Photoshop soon. They went over Image Model 5 for Firefly, which is just their latest thing. It specializes in changing one thing in an image without changing anything else, which is one that a lot of these other image generators struggle with. If you ask it to change, hey, change the color, it's going to kind of change other assets to the image as well, but theirs specializes in the fact that it just changes what you ask it to change and doesn't affect the rest of it. They went over Premiere Mobile, which is Premiere Pro on your phone, which I've been using as of recently. The last few videos that I've edited on my phone, I've done through Premiere on my phone. It's great. Big fan of it. I haven't gotten an opportunity to use it as much as I think I will as I go forward in my life and with the dailies and everything. But at the end of that demo, they're like, oh, and by the way, you can export this to your full Premiere suite, but we'll go over that later. And I'm just like, no, what? You know, that was a huge deal. I was like, go over that now, because the idea of doing like a rough draft on my phone in Premiere and then sending it to my computer where the project just opens with everything and all my footage and I can edit it, that's so attractive to me and something that is unimaginably helpful, especially with like the workflow of the dailies where I can just get little bits of basic editing done throughout the day. And then at night, all I have to do is sit down and like tweak everything with the full suite and like smooth it all out. They're partnering with YouTube. Specifically, they're creating templates in Premiere that you can export your vertical shorts. And then when you're scrolling through shorts on YouTube, if you see a template and you like that, you can click a button and it automatically opens that template in Premiere for you to also utilize. So that's a little bit of that synergy. They're definitely going after trends. So if there's like an editing trend on YouTube, you can hop on that trend bandwagon in Premiere, and it's like this synergetic thing between Adobe and YouTube. I thought was pretty cool. Generative upscale in Photoshop, pretty big deal. You can take a low quality image and upscale it. So that was the keynote. Oh, also dynamic text, which allows you to stack text and make it bigger or smaller, and it automatically keeps it formatted. Again, that's just like a really niche thing that unless you use these softwares, only then can you understand how big of a deal that is. Also, harmonize. When you take a generative asset and put it into a picture, there's something that you can click called harmonize, and it kind of regenerates both effects and assets to make those images look like they live within the same universe, which is something that is and would and will be tedious otherwise. But now it does it all in one button, and the demos that they did were pretty convincing. Let's move on to my first session. It wasn't a session, so like I said yesterday, I went in to take a test, an opportunity to get certified in a software of my choice. I recently found out that the exam is actually for if you've done the Premiere certification course, which I have not, but I still went in and took the test anyways. And, just got to point out the hat. I am Adobe certified as a Premiere Pro editor. So again, means nothing, but just a cool little resume piece that I can now say that I am a certified Adobe editor. They have deemed me a professional, finally. I went into a session that was all about color correction and color science for Premiere Pro. Again, it's very technical. Yeah, you probably won't relate to this, but there were some pretty big things. Premiere has now switched to a wide gamut tone mapping system. It is their whole color correction pipeline has been recoded, which is a pretty big deal because things like DaVinci Resolve, which is another software that was able to do this, Premiere wasn't, has been making Premiere fall behind in terms of people considering it like the best editing software. I am not particularly some big colorist traditionally, but as someone who's been becoming more interested in using LUTs and shooting in flat tone, it was kind of cool because now I have the same tools that when I watch YouTube videos, people are like, well, if you want to do this, you have to switch over to DaVinci Resolve. And I'm like, well, I'm out because I don't use DaVinci Resolve. But now I can do those things that people are doing in DaVinci Resolve right in Premiere in the software that I know and love. It's ASUS CCT, which is the kind of open source color space that everyone uses. They've now implemented that into Premiere Pro. There's no more S-Log to Rec 709 conversion LUTs. It all does it automatically for you, which is a pretty big deal because previously you had to go find LUTs outside of Premiere, like third party that would make your flat uncolor corrected footage look normal, but now the software automatically identifies that and switches it to the appropriate LUT, which is a big time saver, especially if you're not a colorist like myself who can really fine tune what I'm looking for in order to convert those, whether it be S-Log or whatever, into Rec 709. Then I went into a course that was After Effects for designers. But what it really was After Effects 101, which is a software that I feel deeply comfortable in. And it was a lab, so we're all sitting down at computers following a tutorial. And it was very, very for people who've never opened After Effects. So I felt a little awkward, blazing through the tutorials. I almost left a couple of occasions because I was like, this isn't for me. But because they gave us project files in After Effects that we could mess around with, I was just creating it and then, messing around. But I'm glad I stayed because there was a little bit at the end about importing InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop work projects into After Effects that I wasn't really familiar with. So it did end up being pretty helpful. And then the last thing that I went to was a session about using not speed graph in After Effects, but instead using value graph in After Effects in order to achieve proper motion, inertias, and values, and speed ramping, which again is something that I have been chasing after for years in terms of getting better at doing float motion where something comes into the screen really fast and moves very slowly and then comes out, and making that all look really fluid. That's really key to making motion graphics look truly professional and truly interesting and engaging to watch. And I've always failed at that. And this session was specifically going over that exact thing and how to do it. And the speaker was really, really knowledgeable. And I came away with a ton of fresh new approaches and knowledges to how to achieve that better. So that was without a doubt the most helpful for me in terms of this is something I want to get better at. Going there, learning how to get better at it, and now coming out being I'm excited to continue to practice this because now it makes sense to me. Now I feel like I have the understanding of what I've been doing wrong, what I can do better, and how it's going to still take a lot of practice, but now I know I'm not beating my head against a wall trying to fit a square block into a round hole, which is what I've been trying to do previously with my understanding of how to achieve that effect. So that was my day one. It is 8 o'clock here in LA, which is 11 o'clock p.m. Boston time. And I'm exhausted. I'm very tired. And I will see you tomorrow.